This video is going to get a little technical because the ANC's foreign policy explanation requires some unpacking, and that, I suspect, is exactly how they prefer it. This week, while Deputy President Mashatile was in Beijing, deepening ties with China, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister was sitting in Pretoria. In the same week, the US ambassador noticed, and he said something about it, that the ANC has not been able to answer properly since. Thank you to every subscriber who supports this channel. It is always appreciated. And if you are new here, I'm Riaan Roux, and this is the Riaan Roux Show. On 24 June 2026, US Ambassador Brent Bazell posted twice on the official US Embassy to South Africa's X account. The first post read, "The government of South Africa rolls out the red carpet for Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister, while Deputy President Mashatile is in Beijing, deepening ties with China. Pretoria calls this non-alignment. We call it what it is, a choice. The South African people deserve an honest conversation about who their government is choosing to stand with." Later that same day, he posted again, "Deputy President Mashatile in Beijing, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister in Pretoria." Same week, South Africa can't claim the mantle of non-alignment while actively courting America's adversaries. These are choices, and they speak for themselves. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Minister Ronald Lamola responded, and DIRCO issued a formal media statement. The statement read, "Non-alignment must not be conflated with neutrality. We refuse to be drawn into geopolitical contestations or be pressured to take sides. Instead, we prioritize inclusive dialogue, global peace, and our own national interests. We note the inherent contradiction in being publicly scrutinized for engaging Iran and China, the very same states with which the United States itself continues to actively interact." On the surface, that sounds like a reasonable counterpunch. But it isn't, because Lamola just accidentally made Bazell's argument for him. If the US engages with Iran and China while actively choosing sides in global politics, and South Africa does the same, then what is the non-alignment? Lamola's own logic strips the label bare. There's a clear difference between non-alignment and non-neutrality that DIRCO keeps repeating. Their position is non-alignment does not mean neutrality. We can have bilateral relations with anyone. That is technically true, but non-alignment as a foreign policy doctrine has always meant something specific. You don't subordinate your foreign policy decisions to any external power's agenda. The question then is not whether South Africa can talk to Iran and China. The question is whether deepening those relationships serves South African national interest, or whether it serves ANC ideological positioning that ordinary South Africans will end up paying for. Jaco Kleinhans, head of international liaison at Solidariteit, cut through it. Kleinhans said, "Minister Lamola says he is acting in South Africa's interests, yet a further deepening of South Africa's relationship with Iran is, in fact, contrary to the country's interests. The question is not whether Washington dictates, or should dictate, South Africa's foreign policy. The real question is whether an increasingly close relationship with Iran serves the economic interests of South Africans. The answer is no." And he is right, because AGOA, South Africa's duty-free access to the US market, expires at the end of this year, and whether South Africa stays in it is not guaranteed. South Africa has submitted a revised trade proposal to the United States, trying to get the 30% tariffs lifted. A formal bilateral trade agreement between South Africa and the US is being negotiated right now. Every time Lamola doubles down on this posture, he's not speaking power to truth. He is gambling with the livelihoods of South African workers, farmers, and manufacturers who depend on that trade relationship. He also said, "When exports decline, Investment is withheld and trade opportunities are lost. It is workers, manufacturers, farmers, and their families who pay the price. Thousands of South African jobs depend on strong trade ties with the United States. Now, I want to be clear about something because this is where I stand. I support what Brent Bazell said, and I support what Jaco Kleinhans said, because neither of them is arguing that South Africa must become a satellite of American foreign policy. Both of them are arguing something far simpler. If you're going to make foreign policy choices, be honest about what those choices are and who they serve. South Africa has every right to determine its own foreign policy. Every sovereign country does. But a foreign policy that deepens ties with Iran at a moment when AGOA, tariffs, and a new trade deal are all being negotiated with the United States, that is not an independent foreign policy in service of South Africans. That is ideological positioning in service of ANC factional loyalties, dressed up in the language of sovereignty. And there is a difference. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the Parliament on the 25th of June in the National Council of Provinces. Here is exactly what he said.
South Africa's foreign policy is guided by our constitution, which commits the Republic to the promotion of human rights, peace, multilateralism, and a rules-based international order. In this context, South Africa engages with a wide range of countries across the globe based on sovereign equality, mutual respect, and non-interference in the internal affairs of other states. And I've often said that we don't see ourselves as a country having enemies. We are a country that seeks to be at peace with all other countries and have good relations with all. We maintain diplomatic relations with countries across different regions and political systems in pursuit of our national interests and also our commitment to constructive global engagement. This approach is consistent with South Africa's long-standing policy of non-alignment and strategic autonomy. Engagement with countries such as the United States, Iran, the Russian Federation, and the People's Republic of China, and various other countries takes place within this framework. This engagement takes place through bilateral relations that we have with many countries across the world and multilateral platforms, which we are a part of, with a view to advancing dialogue, cooperation, and peaceful resolution of disputes. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation acts in accordance with the policy positions of our government and within the mandate provided by the President and our Cabinet. South Africa remains committed to its policy of non-alignment. This does not imply neutrality or disengagement, but rather an independent foreign policy that seeks to promote dialogue, cooperation, and peaceful resolution of global challenges.
That sounds reasonable until you ask the follow-up question. If you have no enemies and you engage everyone equally, then why does the ANC bilateral relationship with Iran deepen precisely at the moment when it causes the most economic damage to ordinary South Africans? That is not balance. That is a pattern. The ANC will not lose a single job over this. The people who will are already paying their taxes, going to work, and trusting that their government's foreign policy serves them. It doesn't. Don't just know what's happening. Understand what it means. I'll catch you in the next one.